Sorry, now we'll get back to Maiden of the Lake. Your hero power costs 1. This is a special card. This is not truly an inspired mechanic the way you normally think of it. You should think of it more like a Grove Tender. Because you're not going to play it on turn 4. Like, you're not going to play a 2/6 on turn 4, hope it lives, when your opponent has every incentive to kill it. Like, why does the Oasis Snapshot live? It's because your opponent is just generally not incentivized to kill it unless you're a hunter. But the Maiden of the Lake will most likely die. And if it doesn't die, it still has poor stat distribution, and the next turn, you're forced to put down another 4-drop because you have to use your hero power. And that only matters if your hero power does anything, which only half the classes like have hero powers that like do stuff this early that you would want to use, even for just 1 mana. Keep in mind, a 1 mana hero power is kind of okay. Like, it matches how much it should be, right? You deal 1 damage for 1 mana. You get a 1/1 extra for 1 more mana. Like, if you play a card with that ability added on, it's kind of the same. So, this basically makes your hero power into a card advantage machine that doesn't reduce tempo, but you still have to use it. And the tempo was already reduced. You're never going to get your tempo back, unlike with some of these other cards. So it's definitely a weak card on turn 4. In the same way that that Grove Tender is a bad card on turn 3. But later on, let's say you were going to ping something anyway, right? Like, your opponent makes a good trade, has a 3/1 on the board. You're definitely pinging that as a mage, or like they drop a Scarlet Crusader. You want to ping it this turn. Well, you drop Maiden of the Lake and you ping it, and for 3 mana you got a 2/6. It's even better than the Druid of the Flame. And that's how Grove Tender works as well, right? It's a 3 mana card, but if you give the ramp on your turn, you get the mana. So it becomes a 2 mana 2/4, which is a pretty good deal. So that's kind of how you play Maiden of the Lake, in the arena at least. And so you can tell that it's not like that powerful of a card. It's situational, it comes out late, it's more to like wipe out like very small minions. It's not going to be awful, but it's nothing to get excited about. It does combo very well with other Inspire cards. Like I said, I think that's like a Dragon synergy, like maybe slightly more frequent than the Dragon synergy. You'll hit it, but it's not going to be all that good, and it doesn't, like the multiplier, it takes a couple of them to really stack up. The Coldra Drake is the next one on my list. Where is the Coldra Drake? Coldara Drake. Well, it's a dragon. It's a 6/6 for 6. We finally get a fairly neutral 6/6 for 6. You can use your hero power any number of times. This is not going to be terribly useful. Only on turn 10 could you even use your hero power twice. And that takes up your whole turn. And I guess it's nice if you get it on turn 10 to use your hero power twice, but it's not a huge consideration. How many games get to the point where it's turn 10 and you want to use your hero power twice? Very situational to get that triggered. But, that being said, a 6/6 for 6 is not a bad body. And it's a dragon, so it'll help trigger some synergies, maybe. Just look at Draken and Crusher. Even when it doesn't trigger, it's kind of okay. It's rated pretty high. Coldra Drake will be rated decently high as well, but not for the ability. And in the same way, the Garrison Commander, back up here, says you can use your hero power twice. Fine. You know, what are you really going to do? Use it twice on turn 4? No. Later in the game, could be somewhat useful, but later in the game, a 2/3 really sucks. So, they're all just not, like, a little better than neutrals, but not going to make any waves in the arena. And that brings us to the Tournament Medic. I'm going to use this as a jumping off point for viable slow strategies. I think I haven't updated this, I think. There we go. For viable slow strategies. Viable slow strategies. Right now in the arena, man, this is getting longer. This is getting out of hand again. Every time I try to do one of these, it's going to come out to be an hour. Think of it as a podcast. Which we're doing, by the way, if you guys haven't heard. Me and Merb started doing a podcast. The first episode is going to be next week. Very excited about it. It's going to come right before the Arena Coupe, taped live. It's going to be... So we're going to start it off at like half an hour, and then we'll see if we need more time. We probably will. But the first couple episodes are going to be half hour. Okay, so Tournament Medic. Inspire, it's a 1/8. Inspire changes it to, like, gives you 2 health. And I like this card. Not because I think it's good. It's not a good card. It's a crappy card. But I like it because it's allowing for the actual control, in the true sense of control, to potentially be a more viable strategy in the arena. The Antique Healbot already pushed it that way a little. The tournament meta is going to get us a little more there. I don't know if this is going to be the expansion that makes it viable. Maybe they're going to do it in a future expansion. But we're getting a couple setup cards here. They're testing the waters. I like that Blizzard's looking at this. And what I mean by a true control deck is right now you have aggro, where you put down a lot of small minions, and then you can shift off of that to either, like, play Zoo-like and clear the board, to go face and, like, try to finish them off with reach, or to, like, do crazy stuff like use a Cult Master to actually draw cards and get your card advantage back, or maybe to play aggro control, because you also have a lot of control, a lot of, like, spells that you can remove your opponent's minions and deal damage. You can play it more tempo, mid-rangey kind of thing, where you have a deck that has some card advantage, but every time you get card advantage, it's going to be very slightly, and it's going to also give you tempo, because you're just efficiently removing your minions with whatever spells you have in your hand, and you're also dropping some minions. You tend to play 2 for 1. As much as possible in the mid game, or you play just normal mid range, where you look at what your opponent's doing and you kind of like, okay, well, he's going tempo, I guess I'm going for card advantage, or, well, it looks like he's hanging back a bit using his hero power a lot, I guess I have to push and really get that damage in. And then you can play the general card advantage style. I'm not even going to call it control style. I know Hearth Arena breaks it up to attrition and classic control, but really what Hearth Arena is doing is it's trying to break it up to attrition and classic control. In reality, the really sad reality, is that in the arena, there is no such thing as classic control. Attrition is a weird name that I made up anyway. All there is card advantage, which is that eventually the game is going to come to a point where I have more cards, you have no cards, and I have more tempo, because in 10 mana I will play 10 mana, and in 10 mana you will use your hero power and play whatever cards you draw. And at that point I win the game, assuming you don't top deck something that kills me. And it's kind of the same strategy no matter which way you bend it. And it's not played the way Control plays. It's played in a way where, yeah, sometimes you can bait your opponent to doing something. Sometimes you put out some minions so your opponent eats it and you set up for something, for like a Flame Strike or something. Or you try to get your opponent to play into an MCT. But for the most part, what you're doing is you're still dropping a minion every turn, or removing your opponent's minion every turn. You're still, like, playing the game. You're just a little slower, you're a little bigger, you have a little more card draw. Alright, you have a little more like 2 for 1 cards, 3 for 1 cards. That's the only difference. It's not so much a control game as it's a card advantage game, which is fine. It's a totally great, strategy. It's not like the strategy sucks. That's why we let you pick that stuff. But it's not how you, like, if you watch a control deck play out in Constructed, it's doing a lot of things, but what it's not doing is it's not dropping minions on the board that are threatening in the beginning. Right, it'll do that at the end because it has to finish you somehow. Sometimes it doesn't even, right? Sometimes you get like a freeze mage or something and they'll just kill you. But it plays in a very different philosophy. Its philosophy is more combo-y, right? Like, its philosophy is, I have all of these cards. They will remove every one of your things for the right reasons, and they will remove 2 of your things for one of my things, and I will get cards this way while doing nothing, while playing from my hand. It's never going to be possible in the arena. But the more reason why you can't even play a combo, well, it's really hard to play since the Hunter nerf last summer, where the Unleash combo was nerfed. That was kind of the real control, strangely a Hunter, but that was really the only real control archetype that existed at the time. You can't play this combo control style where you wait for the moment and then you massively flip the board and then you play your stuff, because in waiting for the moment you are constantly taking damage, and when you're constantly taking damage, even if you flip the board, your opponent just needs a couple of charged minions, a couple of direct damage to be top decked, and you're dead anyway. So it's super inconsistent even when you get your draws and everything works. What's going to allow this strategy to actually become useful is large or multi-hit taunts, and especially healing, because of the existence of direct damage. So this style kind of works for the Warrior sometimes, but the Warrior as a class is kind of weird right now. But these cards are going to be what makes it a little more mainstream, and what makes the warrior potentially like truly have a control aspect of it, where their 2-for-1 cards also involve taking damage to the face, which is why they need to heal even more. But that's why I like these kind of healing cards. Any card that comes out that heals your hero, it's good for me. I like seeing them. I won't use them. They're crappy cards in this meta. Like, don't get me wrong, they're crappy cards in this meta. But if the meta shifts, they're there. And something else to note is that Tournament Medic is 1/8. That's actually the correct number of stats for a 4-mana card. It's distributed awfully, but it has the numbers. Okay. Now we'll move on to, I guess, other cards. Just kind of ticking down the cards. We don't have that many left to go. And then I'll talk a little bit more. Oof, this is getting long. I'll talk a little bit more about general arena things. The ones in the future won't be this long. The ones in the future will be like 20 minutes because I'll just be going down the list for cards. So North Sea Kraken is an amazing card. I don't know, I haven't really seen what people's reaction to it is because I think it was just like released yesterday. It's a ridiculously amazing card. You think a Fire Elemental's good? Do you ever go to like turn 10 and you draw a Fire Elemental and you're like, aw, well, it's way too late for a Fire Elemental now. Now it's no longer a great card. It's just a pretty good card. No, you never freaking say that. You get a Fire Elemental, you're like, oh, I'm going to Fire Elemental Totem and not use the last 2 of my mana, because that's how good the Fire Elemental is. Well, this is a 9-mana card that deals 1 more damage and has a crucial 7 health. 5 health is a breakpoint, but you can there's still stuff that deals 5 damage. Nothing deals 7 damage. You have Force Tank Max, you have Iron Bark, you have Giants, you have War Golems, which you rarely see, and nothing else deals 7 damage. So that's why Force Tank Max works so well. If you have that 7th health, you need 2 hits to kill, and then Force Tank Max has another hit. This is the same. It also gets 3 hits. It costs 1 more mana than Force Tank Max, but it deals its first hit immediately, and it's better at dealing lethal, because that first 4 damage can also go face, and it's 4 damage of reach if you need it, while having 9 damage of attack, which is 2 more than Force Tank Max. So it's better for pretty much every way. And Force Tank Max, and the 1 extra mana doesn't really make or break it. It barely affects how good it is relative to Force Tank Max. Force Tank Max is pretty good. We consistently rate it like above that like huge clot of like average-ish cards. You're happy to see a Force Tank Max. You're very happy to see a North Sea Kraken. I would go so far as to say that this card is going to be better than the Yeti tier, even though it's 9 mana. It's just such a big, impactful card, and it has an effect as soon as it comes out. It's like a perfect arena card, really, for any big decks. Like, we'll be telling stories to our children of, like, that time we overcame the 3 North Sea Kraken decks to pull out that arena. Okay, maybe I'm the only one that'll tell my kids about that. But it's a good card, and when you see it and you beat it, you're going to feel good about it. And when you see it in your hand, you're just going to feel very good about it. You can even kind of think of it as a mind control. So you get a body that's probably better than anything you can mind control, but you can't remove something that's as big as what you would mind control. And it comes out a turn earlier. So, just an incredibly good card. Alright, what's next? We dealt with this. We dealt with Garrison Commander, Kodo Rider, Frost Giant, another big card. It's an epic. You're not going to see it all that often, but it's good. It's one of the better giants. I would probably say it is the second best giant after the Sea Giant, because by the time you want to play it, you're going to have used your hero power a couple times. And if you haven't, you can start using your hero power, and it'll eventually come out to like make a big board all at once in one turn, which is very useful in the arena. And you're in control of when it comes out, unlike the Sea Giant. Like, sometimes you get these awkward situations with Sea Giant where you're like, oh my god, it's so cheap, but this other thing would actually just be more effective that I already have in my hand. And it's going to remove all my opponent's minion, and the Sea Giant's going to end up costing 6-7 mana instead of like 4-5. But I have to do it. And that's not going to be the case with the Frost Giant. So, I'm really high on the Frost Giant. Legendaries don't matter. Ball of Spiders. It's like a better Nourish. You get 3 1/1s on the board as a cost for not getting your cards at the same time immediately, and 1 mana compared to the Druid. That's a huge win, because those web spinners are beasts, and they're going to taunt face damage if your opponent thinks that you may have like beast triggers in your hand as well, or that you know, something else is going to happen beast related. I really, really like this card. It also means that it's actually better for tempo than Nourish. It's not as good for getting the cards so that you can play them, but if you use Nourish, you're generally not going to play one of the cards you draw on the same turn anyway. You could, but that's typically not how it happens, and instead you play it on the next turn. And on the next turn, presumably, you'll have stuff to kill these web spinners on. So, I like it. Anything that, and it fits with Blizzard's strategy of giving Hunter only like slow cards, as opposed to making Face Hunter more viable. Lock and Load is not an arena card for obvious reasons. You need one other spell to play just to get Lock and Load's card back. Like, for Lock and Load to be a cycle, or an effective cycle, you need one more spell. Or else it does nothing, right? So you need 2 spells for it to actually get any value. And how often do you play 2 spells in one turn? Even as the Hunter, which I understand, you know, has more spell kind of synergies with each other, and Animal Companion is a spell. But it's not going to be that great. It's also a slow card, which affects Hunters disproportionately negatively. Effigy, fine. Fits in with the theme of a mage where you pay 3 mana for a secret and it gets you something. Only instead of a mirror image, it's whatever your opponent removes. You're probably going to force your opponent to remove something of some size. But it doesn't change the way that we think about things, because duplicate is the same, right? You don't want to remove something big first because you'll duplicate it, and then you will lose the card advantage wars. With Effigy, it comes out, it's the same mana, it's random. I don't really care too much about this card. It's not going to be like a bad secret, but it's just going to be one of those mage secrets in that mage secret area. It's not better than a mirror entity, because you do need something on the board, and your opponent can just choose not to trigger it while getting bigger and going face. Whereas for the mirror entity, your opponent's basically like locked down with what he can do. Like, you can really screw your opponent's tempo with a mirror entity, even if he knows it's a mirror entity. Oh, these are done. Oh, Totems, Shaman. Okay. Totem Golem. He's a totem, and he's a 3/4 for 2, and that kind of fits in with the whole Fireguard Destroyer theme. Obviously a very good card. 3 mana is better now than it used to be, but still weaker than 2 mana. Playing this essentially allows you to coin out that 3 mana card and then follow it up with a 2 mana card. It's wonderful. It's common. Really trying to make the Shaman come back. Tuskar Totemic. Summon any random totem. It's a big RNG card. People have talked about, oh, what if the Tuskar Totemic summons a Totem Golem? And every other totem that gets revealed after this, and there will probably be more totems in this expansion, is going to make it better. And that's true, but you're already paying 1 mana, and you're not for stats, and kind of like also another half mana, I guess, because you generally get like a little bit more out of this. So if you get the mass majority of the times, it'll be fairly useless, and then sometimes you'll have like a ridiculous board that's going to be difficult for your opponent to remove. I think of it as an unstable portal. It's nothing. An unstable portal gets even more like ridiculous variants, so it's nothing we haven't seen before. It's not a good card, but it is a card that will win you games on the spot, or just be an awful card. Like, that's Unstable Portal as well. We're not going to recommend people take it, especially good players, but it is a card that will be the bane of good players, because it's RNG, and it's high RNG. Draenei Totem Carrier Battle Cry. Gain +1/+1 for each friendly totem. Fine. It's a normal card. 4 mana for a 4/4 is actually kind of decent. It's not like it's not awful. It's definitely like not good, but it's not awful. And you can always make it a 5/5, which, you know, as we know, is currently the like best stat distribution out of like any possible stat distribution for this meta. And if you happen to have 2 totems, you know, get a really big benefit. And remember, totems aren't just tap totems anymore. You actually have minions that synergize with it. So, it's you know, I'd say it's probably going to end up in the 50s in terms of how we rank them. And that's it. That's all the cards. We are almost at 1 hour, so I'm going to go through the rest of these really quickly. I want to talk about impact on offering rate of drops. I kind of already talked about it, but the way that distribution works, like how the arena is going to be affected, it's going to be, if I introduce a whole ton of class rares and no other class cards, well then all the other class rares are going to be affected, but the other cards are not going to be affected. And the other rare cards are not going to be affected, just class rares. So the distribution of these is different every time they release something. It's not like Blizzard has an official policy to keep everything within a certain range. So Blizzard can change a whole lot of things just by releasing new cards into certain slots. Epics, for example, are a prime place that will get heavily affected. And in addition to this, well, and we don't know about this yet. It's just something I want to keep in mind for the future as more cards come out, and less awful cards are going to come out. Like you saw all these, right? There's one card that I thought was an awful card, which is the Tournament Medic, and I like it for the flavor and for what it allows. I thought the Poison Blade is an awful card, but that's an epic. That's not really going to affect everything. Everything common and rare has been like at least decent, right? Like if you were to put it on our tier list, you're going to be hard pressed to say any of these are less than a 40. You're going to be hard-pressed to say any of these are less than like a 45. And for every new card that comes in that's not awful, it heavily disproportionately affects. It basically puts a stopgap on those really bad cards that are like below 30 on the tier list. Like the amount of Magma Rages that you see is just going to keep dropping like a rock. For better or for worse. That's just one of the effects of this. Which makes me kind of annoyed because I kind of like seeing and using those cards. And we also spend just as much time, if not more time, thinking about the really crappy cards as we do the really good cards. So it feels kind of like more of a waste now than it was before. But that's how the game works. That's how the game will always work. And it's not like we're advising Blizzard to make awful cards. But it could go that way, right? Like you can imagine that Blizzard's making these like weird combo cards, right? And that'll be awful in an arena format. Magic the Gathering does that a lot. And speaking of Magic the Gathering, I kind of want to end the Grand Tournament discussion with what I think Blizzard's arena strategy is going forward in the future. Which is to say that we all know, and this expansion and mechanic makes it really clear, Blizzard doesn't think a lot about the arena, and it hasn't. It kind of like put it out there, thinks it's kind of self-regulating, which is fairly true. And it releases cards for Constructed, and maybe pays a little attention to the rarity for Arena, but I don't even think it does that. I think the rarity is also for Constructed, to like get the curve of how to build a good deck. And the Arena's just kind of been left behind. But it's been fine. The Arena meta has been actually getting stronger since, it took a blow in GVG. But it got stronger in BRM, and it's going to get more fun in the Grand Tournament once it comes out, because I love the Inspire mechanic. It's going to make all the classes very different, but it's going to get a little more unbalanced with the classes. And this is a weird strategy, especially if you're a Magic the Gathering player like I was, and you followed it. You know that by far in Magic the Gathering, like what they call limited formats, which means formats where you build a deck on the spot with a certain collection of cards that are given to you randomly, whether you open a bunch of packs or you have a draft, right? You all put packs into a pool and you draft cards, and then your opponent can't have that card, and you're kind of like monitoring what your opponents are picking, like, oh my god, that guy's making a Murloc deck, we need to stop him, I'm going to take this Murloc because it's okay-ish for my deck, but if he gets it, he's going to kill everybody, right? But these are limited formats versus constructed formats, which are ranked play, tournament play, where you build a deck, you're like, these are my 30 cards, and go me. For Magic the Gathering, huge, well not huge, but like 60-40, I'd say, of interest goes into limited. A competitive interest as well, not just casual interest. Whereas in Hearthstone, if you really were to divide the world, I think Arena would take up less than a third, probably like around a quarter of the interest that's being paid to Hearthstone by its player base, which is one of the reasons why Blizzard isn't really focusing on this right now, and why the Warrior continuously gets left behind, because Warrior's always been doing that. It's one of the most steady classes in Constructed, right? But given the nature of people, this is going to change as the game gets more mature. And when Magic the Gathering first came out, it's not like Limited was hugely popular either. It's going to all shift towards more of these more random, more limited formats, because people get bored with the game. People kind of see what constructed is, which is just that you make your deck changes with the meta very, very, very slightly. The meta like gets a reboot every like 4 months, but otherwise you're kind of just playing the same deck against the same several other decks. Magic is a little more stagnant. There's only usually like 3 or 4 really good decks in the meta. Hearthstone like did this really well, which is kind of why like I think Ranked is doing so well, in that there's generally 9 or 10 fairly top level decks hanging and floating around at any one time, but that's still just 9 or 10 different types of opponents, and that gets repetitive. So the more the veteran players go, the more veteran players drift towards the arena. And the longer a game's been out, the more the veteran player to new player ratio will kind of even out. So in the growth stage, you're focusing on the easy stuff. But now it's going to shift. That's my view on it anyway. And more important than that, beyond the shift, Blizzard kind of treated Arena as the casual, like I think they envision Arena as this casual place where people can just go in, we'll throw you some decks, and then you just play and you have fun. And there's going to be some people that take it really seriously and people will learn from it, but for the most part there's going to be a lot of people who don't know what they're doing, and that's okay, because you get a pack, you know, it's a great way to build your collection, and it introduces you to all the cards. And it hasn't worked out that way. Arena got pretty competitive pretty quickly. Like by the middle of Nax, it was already a more competitive environment, I think, than Constructed. And Blizzard recognized the problem, and that's why Brawl came out. They recognized that, well, casual is not really casual, because people are using it to test real decks and to do their daily quests. And Arena's not really casual, because you just get in, get stomped, and win less than 3 games, and you feel bad about yourself. And you really don't have a chance. There's just too many cards that you have to memorize and things like that. Like, Arena really favors expert players in terms of performance. And so I think they're getting to the point where the turning point will hit, where they're going to have to make Arena into a competitive format, which they haven't done yet. But I'm going to predict that that point is going to be early next year. It could be as early as the December expansion, but I think more likely it's going to be next year when they're going to change the focus. And one of the other reasons Blizzard isn't focusing on the Arena is that I'm sure it makes them no money. Most Arena players they get enough gold back that they won't have to buy too many arenas, even if they aren't infinite, even if they're not even soft infinite. They'll or they'll play just as constructed matches or do some quests or whatever, and they'll be able, like if you're truly casual, you play once every 3 days, you finish your quest doing constructed or brawl or whatever, and then you can play an arena and still have gold left over. So it's not really making people any money. And the prices, just to give you an idea, a sealed format in Magic the Gathering costs about $18. Just your ticket. I don't know what the prizes are or what you get out of it, but the ticket is $18. And then you get the cards that you're actually using. But I'm sure Blizzard would be very happy to sell you $18 worth of cards every time you join an arena, you know, even though if they give you all of your packs at the end. And on top of that $18 worth of packs, you also have to pay like a $12 entrance fee. So it's a total of like $30 to get into limited format games. The prices vary. It goes down to $25 sometimes or like whatever. But that's nowhere close to $1.50 or $2. I think it's $1.50, $2. I don't know how much the arena costs. But it's somewhere below $2. So you can see how... And a sealed format tournament usually plays a lot less games than an arena tournament. At least the potential for games is a lot less. Although I guess if you are really bad, it may be more. And so the pricing is very, very off. And the pricing differential, whereas on the other hand, if you're someone who plays Constructed and you buy packs, you're going to buy a crap load of packs. It doesn't matter what we price the packs at, you're going to just keep buying packs until you get all the cards. Or you're going to keep buying packs until you can make a deck. And so Blizzard is generally priced in a way that makes Arena a lot less profitable for them than Constructed. And so if they're going to treat Arena more seriously, and I think they will, they're going to be kind of pushed to that direction in order to keep their player base, they're going to have to raise the price somehow. I don't know how they're going to do it, but that's just my prediction. If I were in Blizzard's shoes and I need to find a way, they're going to find some way, even if it's just like, what do you call that, like cosmetic enhancements like for the arena, that require cash or something. They're going to have to find a way to monetize the arena better. The arena is just very poorly monetized at this point, I think, and that's going to affect their bottom line, because their executives are going to sit there and they're going to look at it and they're going to say, well, the arena makes nothing. It seems to run fine by itself. Why are we doing anything about it? Let's focus on the areas making us money. But the arena is not making money, not because there's no interest. It's making way less than the interest that it's generating because of their structure, which favors all of us because we all are benefiting from it by playing it for free. But I see this shift coming. Anyway, kind of an aside. I just wanted to talk about Blizzard's incentives when it comes to the arena. And we also kind of want Blizzard to care about the arena, because then they'll start actually releasing cards for the Warrior. Or at least I want Blizzard to care about the arena, because I like the Warrior. And really, I've said it before, if the average card rating we give to the common card and rare cards of the new releases for Warrior, let's not say average, if the median is not above a 65, or it's not a 64 at least, I'll give them that. It's not a 64 at least in our tier list. I'm going to riot. I don't know how I'm going to riot, but I'm going to be super, super upset because the Warrior's just been trash over and over again. Even the Hunter has been getting good cards. And Hunter's like lousy in the constructed from what I hear. Like lousy as in everyone uses it and it takes very little skill apparently and they win a lot with it. So, I don't know. Okay, and finally the last point before I sign off. This is already over an hour. Hearth Arena's TGT outlook. We are going to have everything done before the game goes live, before the expansion goes live. The tier list will be up. All the synergies will be input in. We'll have new systems for Inspire. We'll have a bunch of other new systems. We're putting out an update early next week to wrap up all the things and bugs that became more noticeable with the release of BRM, to wrap that up. And then whenever Blizzard releases this, assuming they give us like a 48-hour head start on the last batch of cards, we'll be working round the clock on it and we'll get everything out and it'll be ready. And so when Blizzard releases it, we'll be up. It may not be bug free, like there's no way for us to test any of this stuff, but like in theory it would all be right, and it would take into account all the hero power stuff and whatever. And other things will be more accurate too, because we're just building new systems. So nothing to fear there. And we obviously hope that this thing releases as late as possible. But right now, it's looking like it may release like first or second week of August. So even if it releases at the end of the first week of August, we should have enough time to get everything done. I'll be cutting it close, but you know, worst comes to worst, me, Merps, the programmer, all pull a bunch of all-nighters, and we'll get it out. So that's the first episode or the first part of the Grand Tournament Adwikta's vlog, theories, thoughts, stuff. I'll come back again next week, record something else, and it'll be shorter. It'll be way shorter because I would just be reviewing cards. All right, thanks for watching, and remember, if you like this, hit a like on the bottom, subscribe to us. We have a big expansion plan coming up in the next 2 months, both in streaming and in YouTube. So stick around, it's worth it. And if Hearth Arena is also getting a big expansion in the next month, so everything's kind of going big in a much bigger way than it was before. And we're very happy, especially our loyal viewers and followers, that you guys have kind of carried us to this place. So well, I'll see you guys next week, I guess. Or Tuesday night, 7 p.m. New York time, Eastern time, which is 11 p.m. GMT. I'm going to be doing a solo stream, just kind of playing the arena. We'll do like 2 runs probably. So you can catch me on Twitch then as well. See you guys.